So I think you can divide this into wet and dry, as we say in the industry, food and drink. In terms of drinking patterns, and that is related to the supply chain, we have seen an increase on people wanting lighter alcoholic drinks, which applies to wine as well. There are a lot of wineries in Spain now that are producing less alcoholic, less punchy reds and whites. People want, because of health reasons and trend reasons as well. They want something that's a little bit lighter, less alcoholic. They perceive it as healthier. So a lot of the suppliers we work with have this challenge now of a country that has always historically produced pretty heavy reds, for example. They now need to source and contact producers that are doing something different.
Welcome to Chain Reaction, the video podcast for the supply chain and logistics industry. In this podcast, we speak to industry leaders who share their ideas, thoughts, and anecdotes from within the logistics world.
Hello, everybody. Once again, it's a Chain Reaction podcast, and we talk about everything logistics and supply chain, and things are very closely linked to that. And today we have Alberto Borge Corral. He is a highly experienced hospitality industry professional. This is one of the sectors that we haven't spoken about yet. And I would like to explore how that industry got impacted by a variety of supply chain kind of events that has been impacting everything around us over the past few years. So welcome, Alberto.
Thank you very much, Michael. My pleasure.
Well, it's good to have you here. So, I'd like us to start with, again, so it's like an introduction into the industry and the introduction to you. So you are, a general manager of one of the restaurants in Manchester. And I would like you to explore a little bit kind of your journey into that sector, into the hospitality industry overall. So can you just talk a little bit about yourself and obviously the role, that you play in the business?
Yeah. So I started working in hospitality back in Spain, actually more focused in hotels. And then I moved to the UK in 2015 and started working in restaurants in Manchester, more specifically. I held different positions, from training staff to working with wine at different restaurants. And then I arrived at Tast 5 years ago and made my way up to general manager today.
Okay. Well, this is. I know. I appreciate that. So sorry, I didn't mean to sound like this is an interview type discussion. But what is interesting is because you've seen different aspects of the hospitality industry. Because you mentioned the hotels and you mentioned restaurants. So there's what. As customers, what we don't see is what's going behind the doors. Even like we may see as far as kitchen, but there's a lot of supply chain is involved in getting foods on our tables. We have been, and this being a supply chain podcast, this is actually a very, very interesting area of operations. And I would like to start with, it still kind of, still rings, very heavily on us, the whole kind of the Brexit and the COVID lockdowns. So these are quite a major disruptions that have happened to the industry and to the sector, especially to the hospitality ones. Which also disrupted some of the supply chains. So, can you talk a little bit about what are those impacts specifically, how they felt for the for the hospitality business?
I think they are separate. The effects of both can be felt separately in different aspects of the industry and the business, but they also go hand in hand. So Brexit kicked in, well, the vote for Brexit was 2018, if I'm not wrong.
Well, yeah, it's COVID-19, so yeah, the Brexit was 18, yes, yeah.
18, but then a lot of the regulations didn't kick in until we were in COVID times. no? Because there was a period of grace for the UK to leave the European Union. But we had to first face the challenges from COVID, which was restrictions in trade, but also restrictions in the supply chain, because a lot of people might think we were only restricted to operate within certain limits. There were a lot of measures that were put in place in the UK for opening times, number of people that you could, serve at any one time inside the establishment, etc. But a lot of people don't remember or simply not see that the supply chain had their own restrictions as well. People could not move goods from the EU, for example, which is our case, that freely anymore. And then you have the, let's say, Brexit regulations kicking in from 2020 to 2021. That also affected that. So it was kind of two almost like dramas going on at the same time with very similar effects, but you had to kind of deal with separately. In terms of Brexit, not 100% sure if it has to do with supply chain, but you were not able to get your hands on qualified workers from the EU specifically, because I'm talking about hospitality, but there are qualified workers in hospitality. Is a highly skilled industry. But also COVID made that a lot of those people went back to their countries of origin because they felt safer. So it's not a good cocktail for sourcing what you need in those times.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, yeah, it's the qualified personnel. You can have a chef that that has moved back home and you can't find one. Not just a generic chef, because what you guys are, is my understanding, is the Catalan cuisine. Quite. It's not just a generic Spanish one. It's a general Spanish one. It's more specifically to Catalonia. So, again, this is one of the areas that we also want. We talked about just before the recording. Is you wanted to bring some specific local wines from some of the distributors that work very effectively in Spain, but they don't exist or not licensed in the UK or don't carry that much that much stock of those specific wines that you're looking for. And you tried to bring some from Spain into the UK, and you found it very difficult. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it was a little bit traumatic. I am not going to lie, because as you say, we're a Catalonian restaurant in Manchester, so our offer is very specific. It's not, as you said, a generic Spanish establishment. You do need a lot of skilled people, chefs, waiters, people that work in the front of house that know what they're doing, that know what they're talking about, because it's so specific. So it was difficult at some point to source the staff to do that. But also when you talk about supply chain issues more specifically, in this case, wines, which is what I generally do as well. I look after the wines in the restaurant, and how to bring some of them back from Spain, because I knew there was a supplier that operates in Spain but doesn't operate in the UK. That was very good. What that meant, basically, and it meant I learned a lot. I learned almost so much as to say that I'm not sure if I would try and do it again, because this was 2022.
Painful.
2022. I placed an order with this Spanish supplier. It's one of the most important wine suppliers that operates in Spain, but they don't operate in the UK, as we said. And there were the minimum quantities that you needed to order for it to be commercially viable increased as well because of Brexit. So we learned that in the process, and we just found out that once we placed the order, we were going to have a problem in terms of actual space in the site to be able to, keep all these wines in a good condition, or even keep them in a place that was, not on site to the customer, because there was so many. It only made sense, commercial sense, if you brought them in large quantities, which for us made sense back then, but it also meant that you're holding an incredible amount of stock. And that is not something that, under the way I do management, or I try to manage a business, I don't think that's something that's particularly smart, because it's money that you have there tied doing absolutely nothing. A lot of the wines, one of the mistakes I made, for example, was that some of the wines were meant to be drunk young. Some wines are meant to be a little bit longer. Some of them you need to drink young. So a lot of them did not sell very well. And there were young wines that then you think, what do I do with this now? The idea was to order wines from Spain directly from producers, which is what this supplier does. It's going to be cheaper for you, but then all the hurdles and the taxes that they then apply to alcohol supplies, etc. It didn't make a lot of sense. I ended up selling the whole thing. Luckily, I have none of those products left in the building, but it was a lot of stress. It was very stressful to think, this looked like a good idea, but in the process, we're finding out that it might not be. And then it changed almost month by month. Now you need this paper. Now you need this permit. Now this supplier might operate that. Now the supplier might not operate. The company that you needed to hire to do the transport as well, because this company didn't do, they were not going to transport to the UK to you. So yeah, that was interesting.
Well, yeah, I think the word interesting probably not the best description of your experience.
It was. I think it was, because it gave me. I was used to deal with just suppliers. They have their own supply chains. They know what they're doing. There are incredible suppliers in the UK, and they know exactly what they're doing. But I only saw that, as you said before, people don't really see what's going on behind the scenes in restaurants, etc. Yeah. I think I saw what was going on behind the scenes in that aspect. So that was interesting for me.
Okay. No. The word interesting is perfect, but I also hear a lot of pain coming through through what you were describing. But one of the things that I picked up, which is actually also quite interesting, is not just the sheer volume of administration and paperwork that is accompanied, but it's also a constantly changing kind of layout of what is it needed. So is this paper, or no longer this paper, but it's a different paper. So it's the changing. I mean, we can't deal with complexity as long as we know the rule of the games and and if they're stable. But if they're constantly changing, it's very hard to keep up, which makes running the business even more painful.
It certainly does. And I think it was that time where inflation wasn't starting to kick in just yet, but it was kind of starting. And then the government was under the pressure to, raise a little bit more revenue from taxes. So alcohol, was one of the goods that the government also decided to tax. So I'm not here to, defend the government, but I don't think it was very easy for them, in the sense that I don't think they knew what they were doing anyways, because it was a deal that they were kind of trying to sign with the EU then. I think there must have been a lot of confusion on their part as well, because it is true that a lot of the things changed very quickly, and it was quite frustrating, not to their defense, but I don't think it was very easy to get this up to speed when you have a system that works perfectly and you decide you're going to scrap it and change it for a different one. I think, it just caused a lot of confusion. As you say, no one can. If you at least knew what was the end goal, then yes. But I think a lot of people were a little bit lost.
Mm. No, I completely understand, and I agree with you. Well, one of the interesting topics that you bringing up the whole idea of economics, and unfortunately these days, we talked about the markets are quite tough, and the people are not having enough disposable income. So the restaurant attendance and the use of hospitality by the people is sort of suffering a little bit, and we can see it on high streets. So the economic pressure. So can we just maybe explore a little bit more on kind of the costs for all of the imports is increasing, whilst the revenue from attendance and from the guests and the patrons is going down. So how that balance is now working for you?
It's not working particularly well. It's not a good combination. I don't think it's a good cocktail. What is going on right now, because it means that people feel the pressure of everything going up. It is everywhere. It's on the news. Any articles, any TV channel that you wanna see will tell you that everything, the cost of everything, pretty much, inflation as a general is going up and has been going up steadily for the past few years. And then I don't think necessarily salaries that are not minimum wage have been going up as much. There was a period that, yes, but in general, over this past 5 years, they have been quite stagnant as well. And a lot of people have felt that. And I think what they look is for value in what they purchase, but they are also going to think twice compared to 2018, whether they go to a restaurant twice a week, once a week, or once a month. The reality for a lot of people have changed, sadly, towards that. So we have felt it. We have felt it not necessarily in the amount of people or the volume of people, but certainly how they spend their money, which we have seen is less in certain items as well, which makes me think people still maybe want to keep going out as much as they thought they used to, but they're not spending in the same way and the same amount as they used to.
You are listening to Chain Reaction. This podcast is brought to you by Phlox, the leading marketplace for the supply chain and logistics industry. Visit phlox.is to find out how you find the perfect supplier or make your services available to prospective buyers. Thanks for tuning in. Now back to the show.
Right. Okay, well, that's interesting because it also brings us to another topic that we've explored a little bit, is the kind of evolving customer behavior that you kind of started kind of tapping into, and evolving tastes as well. So you guys again are very, very kind of the specialized and distinct kind of cuisine type. So, but how do you see the evolution of taste of people and the customer behavior is now presenting itself over the past few years, in terms of, again, maybe with linking back to the logistics elements of how you source those potentially either new ingredients or the different wines or inputs for different recipes?
I have realized a couple of things. Well, I think you can divide this into wet and dry, as we say in the industry, food and drink. In terms of drinking patterns, and that is related to the supply chain, we have seen an increase on people wanting lighter alcoholic drinks, which applies to wine as well. There are a lot of wineries in Spain now that are producing less alcoholic, less punchy reds and whites. People want, because of health reasons and trend reasons as well. They want something that's a little bit lighter, less alcoholic. They perceive it as healthier. So a lot of the suppliers we work with have this challenge now of a country that has always historically produced pretty heavy reds, for example. They now need to source and contact producers that are doing something different. But I have to say, in this particular topic, the supply of Spanish wine in the UK in the recent years has increased in quality and quantity dramatically. The amount of suppliers that you have now is a lot higher than you would have had 10 years ago. There is an interest in this particular country, Spain. The wines are amazing. Not that I'm Spanish, but obviously they're good wines. But it's true that they have that challenge of what producer can I contact now to, because I am asking them, do you have any lighter? People are asking for lighter styles of red and white. Can you supply that? And then, yeah, of course. Let me have a look. They talk to different suppliers. They talk to different producers, and then they might have a portfolio that is increasingly heavy on these kind of products because people ask for it. The suppliers are doing it because we ask them, and I've had a couple of conversations with them as well, thinking, do you think this is trend? Do you think this is here to stay? Because obviously they need to manage their own stocks as well. Then they don't want to buy a huge amount of these kind of products if then they're not going to be able to shift it. No, so it's a little bit difficult for them. But for us, we've definitely seen in when it comes to drinks, we've definitely seen that shift towards those kind of beverages. But also in terms of food, people are also looking for healthier options. And, Spain is big. We're big in our meat as well. So we do have a lot of meat dishes on the menu. Just really high quality meat that we source from suppliers that work with producers in Spain. But people are moving away from it. People are moving more towards everything that's plant-based, veggie, vegan, etc. We're seeing it. We're seeing it a lot more. So when the UK left the EU, a lot of the vegetables that made their way to the UK most likely were made in the south of Europe. And more likely they probably came from places like Almeria, that produces a really, really big percentage of the vegetables that we consume in Europe. But now that trade is broken, so your veggies come from somewhere else. And that might affect what you do, because certain recipes, for example, might require a very specific, because we're Southern Europeans, we would not accept a different kind of pepper to this pepper that you need to make this particular recipe, So it makes you think, right? Now we need to get creative. And you speak with our executive chef, Paco, amazing chef in Catalonia, and he always gives us ideas. If what you're finding is this, then we're gonna have to give it a Catalonian twist by inventing something. There is more dishes that we do now that might be specials that we run on the weekend that are almost also like a test for customers, even if you like, where you tend to maybe make something that it would be more, you could class more as an English dish, but has some kind of link to Catalonia because you've used this particular vegetable, or vice versa. It will depend on your ability to find this produce that is not easy nowadays. And instead of coming from Southern Europe, Catalonia, Almeria, Spain, it is coming from Chile, for example. And the customer will ask. Customers will ask nowadays more than they did in the past. Where are you sourcing this from? Why is this dish like this? Is this traditionally Catalonian? Is this something that you're trying? Is it something that you wanted to do because, you wanted to use something more local, but still build a bridge with Catalonian cuisine? So all those things will put also pressure in that supply chain, because the suppliers will be asked as well. Because if as a business you're asked by your customers, you're going to pass that on to your suppliers to be able to source the best stuff possible. But the big thing is, more particularly for food, because it hasn't affected beverages, in particular wine from Catalonia, that much, because most of the wine list we source from Catalonian producers. But food is the one good that is, has been affected the most for us to be able to source it from where we want it. It's like we don't have that much of control now to, suppliers are gonna try and find what they want to sell as they would, but now it's gonna come from different places.
Right, no, that's very interesting. So, because of this complexity and because of these kind of restrictions and availability, now it's not that kind of your supply base is driven by the menus you create, is the other way around, as you create the menu to essentially to accommodate for whatever supply that you have. But that brings another topic that could be quite interesting as well, is how do you manage inventory? Inventory for let's say for wine, because it's more of a durable good and it can be on the shelf for quite some time, versus the highly perishable food. So you bought some meats and or you're getting some particular peppers that are coming from somewhere, but the quantity that you bought maybe is too much for what you've needed for. So how do you manage the cost as well as the storage as well as the inventory and the stock level kind of aspect?
With data, which is it's a fast-paced environment. Hospitality, it has always been, it will always be, and it has to be. So sometimes we ourselves say, don't have that much time to think. Then, what will I need for next week? I think last week I sold this much. So for next week, I'm going to order this much. But you're only guessing, One of the best things that has happened to hospitality in recent times, but they've been running for a few number of years now, is systems, point of sale systems that then communicate with stock systems, or point of sale systems that do the whole thing for you. A point of sale where you sell a dish of this, which contains certain recipe with certain products, and it kind of, at the end of the month, you can run a report how many of these things you have sold versus how many things you have ordered, because you will be able to place those orders through the system. So everything is integrated. The system we use, everything integrated. You place the orders through the system, tells you how much comes in. As you sell it, will tell you how much you've sold. And it is intelligent enough to kind of, you can integrate a recipe on there, and it will tell you if for every dish of this contains 10 grams of onion, you have sold 100,000, that equals however many kilos. And then at the end of the week, you want to have a look at how much of that you have sold to then be able to, prepare accordingly. Because the main expense in restaurants, at least that people don't really have in mind all the time, is wastage. That is 100%. And I am 100% sure us could do it in still a better way. A lot of restaurants could do it in a much better way. I am not 100% sure about suppliers. Actually, this thought just came to my head now. It would be interesting for you to maybe contact one of the wine or food suppliers and ask on their end how they manage, because in our case it might be kilos, but in their end it could be tons of produce, But across the board, whether it's us or bigger suppliers, you need to have a look at different aspects like the season of the year. People are going to order more things depending on what month you're on, just basically because it is going to be more available. But what we try to do is try and have is a little bit of a game, try and have as minimum stock as possible. And end the week with the least amount of stock possible. Now, that means you're going to run out of things. But if you're trying to get everything fresh, and if you're trying to be responsible, the customer will understand that if you run out of certain things in a Sunday, for example, which is the last day of the week, they're not going to be that pissed off. Because if you explain it well, you say, I work responsibly with these suppliers, I have a limited amount of this, otherwise it's going to be detrimental to their business and my business. They will understand that decision you've made of making a certain dish unavailable, which is something that a lot of restaurants will start doing now. and it's purely down to not to being able to work with the freshest produce possible and the least amount of stock possible.
No, that's very interesting because we did talk about how things are quite tight, especially the margins. I mean, from the economics point of view, and I'm glad that you mentioned that that technology is becoming is getting on the kind of a forefront. How you can manage this balance as effectively as possible, and people that don't embrace technology and the places that don't embrace technology or enough of it may suffer from, as you said, too much waste, too many losses, too much spoilage, or decreasing quality of products that they try to give to customers, and then eventually disappointing customers, and the customers will never come back. So it is becoming like a vicious circle.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a podcast like yours will probably, if anybody that doesn't really see what's going on at the background listens to all these things, will realize that the world is actually interconnected in an unbelievable way, and a bad decision that's not run based on data will have an impact on your particular business, because I think knowledge, a lot more people nowadays know what is going on behind the scenes than ever before. So that's why I said that customers will ask you these kind of things, because they want to know what's behind now. It's not like 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's like people, not that they didn't care, but they didn't necessarily see what was behind.
Well, that was the reasons why we've started the podcast, because as fundamentally we are a software business that does logistics and the visibility of logistics and supply chains. We understand that what we need to get these conversations are a bit more openly to give the audience the ability to actually understand and see for different industries how the technology is impacting and how it's helping the businesses, and what is going behind the scenes, what's going behind the curtains, as far removed as possible. So let me ask you maybe last question, and I do like asking that question. If you had a magic wand and you can solve one problem in logistics and kind of supply chain area of your business, what would it be?
That is not an easy question to answer. I might need about 10 seconds to think about it, to be fair. I think it would probably be what we were talking about before, about people knowing what the end goal is. I think the world is in a little bit of a turmoil now. We've seen it with tariffs coming from the US, the UK leaving the EU. It seems that kind of like that protectionism is making its way back in a way. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody knows where we're going. And if we don't know where we're going, that's just going to hinder where all the produce is going and what we're going to use it for at the end of the day. So if we were able to, if I had that wand, I'd probably use it to unify a lot of the laws that go around commercial and trade agreements, etc., to try and, work a little bit better together. I think it might be a little bit like a utopia. I understand. But it is true that the way it's going now, it seems to be like we're going to have more hurdles than before, So I think that we could probably use that magic wand to protect, the employees from the supply chain to the employees that face the end consumer, and also protect that chain as well as much as possible, as opposed to kind of like, starting trade wars with each other. But that is, it's not easy. I don't think.
It's not easy, but I'm 100% with you. The latest announcements on the potential tariffs on China of 100% that was announced last Friday, that shocked the stock market. So this uncertainty, this is the biggest problem, and they talk in finance market and in supply chains is very much so as well. Is the uncertainty. We talked about that in kind of in blogs and today as well. Is the not knowing, not just what the end goal is, but also what is the rule of the game.
Yeah. I was going to say, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no. It's like I'm just that's exactly that. If you don't know this, and because the supply chains that actually, especially with imports, that going from other countries, it takes time, and you don't want to be exposed to a problem where you've made a decision based on your understanding of one set of rules, and by the time that the goods have arrived or have hit the port or hit your customs, it's like there's a different set of rules, and you end up having either extra costs or admin or delays, and it just complicates the life so much.
I think shortening my answer, that would be hospitality is quite an organized way of working. You have to have everything set up. You have your mise en place, prepared everything for the next service. You have to know what's going on. So that magic wand could be used for that. It would bring me a lot of peace, to be fair.
Peace and stability, yes.
The stability, yes.
I'm 100% with you on that. Well, Alberto, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining the podcast. We will certainly mention the URL and the Tast restaurant in Manchester. So anybody's local, will highly encourage you to visit. And thanks again. And I appreciate that the supply chain element of the conversation is only a part of the pain, but it's definitely one of the areas that is very interesting to our audience. And thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thanks for tuning into Chain Reaction. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please don't forget to subscribe. If you have a story or opinions to share from your sector, we'd love to hear from you. Simply reach out to Chain Reaction or visit flox.is for more information. See you next time.